Why don't people trust academics and scientists? As a social scientist myself, I know that trust, or lack thereof, is built on communication. And scientists often have a really difficult time communicating with the public. Phrases like, the evidence suggests, or this is statistically significant. They make sense for the context that we're using them in, but when the public hears them, they hear, we're not sure. In order to get a platform for the science, we often rely on the media or politicians. But unfortunately, in both Germany and the United States, this has resulted in trust in science becoming a partisan issue. In the United States, people who lean left, 62% of them will have trust in science, versus people who lean right, only 20%. Jesus, 20%. We see the same thing here in Germany with trust in science being even lower. So if you lean right, it's about 38%, and if you lean left, 55%. So it's not just in the way that scientists themselves are communicating, but also in the way that politicians are communicating about science. Obviously, COVID is a really good example of this. And then, like I said, the media also plays a major role. In 2019, I did a study on this myself. So I looked at the way that news media was reporting on business research. Media always put a positive or a negative spin on the scientific findings, because that's what's going to attract you to click on the article. We also know that formal education has something to do with this. The more formal education you have, the more likely you are to trust science, potentially because you're seeing the science happen firsthand. Some journals have implemented a media section where the scientists can try to explain to the media what their findings mean. And that's great, it helps, but when politicians in the media get a hold of it, they'll have their own spin. We also have the issue of corporations funding their own studies. Of course, a huge distrust in science has come when we're reporting independent studies that were set up in such a way to find the results that a corporation was already looking for. And while a lot of these studies don't come from social scientists or scientists themselves, they come from think tanks that are funded by the corporations, it doesn't matter because it's reported as science. We end up with comments like academics have zero credibility. But in reality, it's not the scientist, it's those who are communicating on behalf of the scientists, the intermediaries. So then scientists and social scientists like myself take to TikTok for a direct means of communication. But of course, this kind of format doesn't allow for the sort of in-depth discussions that need to happen around scientific findings. So then in the age of disinformation and social media, we just end up with a bunch of voices yelling at each other regardless of what their qualifications are. And they're all just as loud.